Hello and welcome to season 10 of the Meaning Movement podcast. If you're watching this, if you're hearing my voice, this is the culmination of a ton of work that my team and I have been doing over the past few months to get ready, to get prepared to 4x our production with this podcast. You may have heard me talk about before how important the Meaning Movement is to me personally and how much I've wanted to see it to go to new places, and how I'm kind of just throwing everything at the wall, see what sticks, kind of blowing it up to see what's going to happen. And this episode and this season of the next couple of months of doing 2 episodes per week is a piece of that process for me. So I'm so excited to be here with you, to be doing this together. So welcome to season 10. Our guest today is known in the Twitter sphere as the Build in Public guy. I put that in air quotes because if you have ever dug into this idea of building in public, well, let me just first define that building in public is the idea of building something, but showing the steps along the way instead of just offering the finished product that once it's complete. That's a phrase that's used a lot in the indie hacker, indie developer world. And so if you've ever explored that world, at this moment, eventually find Kevon Chung's work. He started his career running a VC-backed startup. After leaving that, he has reinvented himself as a solopreneur, building on an online business all around this idea of building in public. In this interview, it was just so much fun to dig in with Kevon. He shares with us some of the tips and tricks on how he started making friends online, building free things like his Build in Public guide, a guide that I've gone through to help shape my thinking around how I show up online, as well as his Making Twitter Friends email course, and how all of these products and efforts have gradually built to a following for him online. Today, he's continuing his Build in Public path as he runs a 5-figure online business. He finds meaning and purpose and enjoyment from being able to share, teach, and help so many people through his work. I really enjoyed this conversation with Kevon. I really enjoyed following him on Twitter and engaging with him there. He practices what he preaches. He really does such a good job of just sharing the journey as he goes. I think you're going to enjoy this conversation as much as I did. If you're not subscribed, hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening or watching, and let's get into it. This, of course, is the Meaning Movement podcast. It's a show about work worth doing. If you're looking to level up your life, your income, your career, your mindset, any of those things, you're in the right place. Today with special guest Kevon Chung. Stay with us. This episode, like all episodes of the Meaning Movement podcast, is made possible by the Calling Course. I just want to say, what do I mean by that when I say made possible? It sounds like something that they say in Sesame Street at the beginning or the end. My kids love Sesame Street. What I mean by that is this is a bootstrapped project. I have a course called the Calling Course. It's what I consider the cornerstone or flagship offering of the Meaning Movement. That course is all about work, all about purpose, all about navigating this space of these questions of who am I? What is my life about? Where am I going? What's my contribution going to be? Whether that's right now, in the future, whatever it might be. This podcast has expenses. We pay for those expenses via sales of that Calling Course, also through sponsorships. Share a little bit more about in just a moment. But I wanted to just, instead of talking about the Calling Course here today, wanted to share some words from a recent member of the course. This is Ryan. He sent this over and gave me permission to share this with you. So I'm going to read from him, his thoughts on being a part of the Calling Course. He says, discovering more of who I am and how that connects to the world in work is an overwhelming process. It can be hard to know where to start and easy to feel stuck. The Meaning Movement has been a great acceleration, affirmation, and help in this to me. The Calling Course specifically offered new perspectives and a deeper invitation into who I am and how I can walk the path to becoming my fullest self, connected to others in a mission through work. I love that so much. The combination of material, questions, and direct coaching through Q&A is powerful. I recommend it to anyone doing the hard work of walking deeper into their call. First, thank you so much, Ryan, for those words. They are just so fantastic. And I couldn't have said it better myself, which is why I'm reading them here. If you're listening or watching and you want to know more about the course I open up for enrollment periodically. I don't have a set schedule at this time, but the best way to know when it's going to be the next enrollment period is going to be opening is for you to be on the email list. You can get on the email list anywhere at themeaningmovement.com. You'll find a bunch of subscribe boxes around the site, or go to the calling course, thecallingcourse.com. There is a free mini course. It gives just a small taste of what the calling course is all about. If you join that mini course, you'll be sure to be on the list for our next enrollment. So if any of that sounds exciting and enticing to you, make sure to jump on the email list, and then you'll be notified when that next enrollment period opens. I just want to take a quick moment to talk about sponsorship. I've always said that this podcast, this endeavor, is made possible by the calling course. What that means is it's self-funded, it's bootstrapped, but we are opening the door to sponsors to come alongside us if they're a good fit for our audience. So if you have a business, a service, or work for someone who does, that would like to get in front of an audience like ours, shoot us an email at podcast@themeaningmovement.com. We can tell you more about what we have to offer by way of our audience and sponsorship opportunities, and we can take the conversation from there. Podcast@themeaningmovement.com. Thanks so much. Kevon, thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the Meaning Movement Podcast.
Hey, Dan. So excited to be here. I love your topic, and I just cannot wait to chat with you.
I love it. I love it. Well, we've been, I guess, I feel like we have a budding friendship on Twitter, which is always fun to see. I don't know how social media can actually facilitate friendships and connection. And so really, yeah, excited to have this excuse to get to know you more and hear your story. The question I like to start with is, how do you begin to talk about the work that you do?
That's a really hard question, actually. Because if you ask me at different times of my life or career, right, I would have different answer. But these days, people call me the built-in public guy. That's the topic, the niche that people associate me with. And I'm grateful because it's really hard to get people to recognize you for something on the internet. So that would be how I start to talk about I'm the built-in public guy. One of it, not the only one.
Yes. And that's how I first found you, because I was like, how do you build in public? But let's start there, because listeners might not be familiar with that concept. How do you define building in public?
So the marketing that we usually know is like you have to tell the good stuff, you have to brand it, package it, and you don't want to feel weakness. You don't want to show weakness. So building public is actually a bit more than that, because you are doing that, but you're also showing the down, which is like you're struggling through something, you are facing some struggles, you are having some mistakes, but you turn it around. So when you share this kind of stories in your journey, guess what? People start to have trust in you. And guess what? These days, trust is so important because everyone is a brand of their own. And if people trust you, they just listen to what you say and listen to your recommendation. So building public is a way to build that.
Yeah, I love that. I have so many follow-up questions on that, and because I feel like it's a growth edge for me personally, because I feel a lot of pressure to have it all together and to put off it's a little bit counterintuitive, because I feel like my default is, well, I need to have it all put together so that people will trust me. But the whole ethos of build in public is quite the opposite. Like, by not having it all together and being vulnerable and open and authentic, it actually does create trust, right?
I think that's actually why it is the hardest thing for people to start, because when you get on Twitter, you get this misconception like, oh, these big names, like really big names like Elon Musk are talking and he's so smart. And then the other group of people you pay attention to are like big influencers, maybe 30K followers, 50K. And these two group of people are just so smart and they seem to know everything. They're like expert in their field. And you get sucked into that picture of like, you have to do that to get there. But the truth is not. The truth is you are just a small potato. Like when I started out, I'm actually still a small potato. But the key is not to pretend to be an expert. Just be human, network, make friends around you, share what you know, and that's it. That's how you get off the first few steps.
I love that. I love that. Well, and it sounds I love it, and I hate it because it sounds it sounds really terrifying, if I'm honest. I'm like, but I love the idea of it, but then I think about, like, actually sharing that stuff, and I'm like, I feel my heart, like, my anxiety raise inside of me. But let's rewind a little bit, and how did you get into this? Like, tell me some of your career journey. What brought you to this particular niche?
Okay. So 2012, that's the year I graduated from college. And I study like business, entrepreneurship, finance, the business topics.
Yeah.
But I didn't go into finance because I just couldn't imagine myself working in a bank. That was kind of
Yeah.
my childhood dream, like be a banker, because my family has always been telling me that. So ever since then, I have taught myself to code, failed, and then went to a coding boot camp, and then got my first job as a software engineer in Singapore. So I actually
Okay.
learned coding in New York, came back home to Hong Kong, and then found a job online and hopped on the plane and moved to Singapore in 5 days. That was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot of
And
change
then
real
I
fast.
have been, yeah, basically in startups all my career.
Yeah.
And the key turning point that probably then you're wondering is like, how did you start getting online and talking about
Yeah.
building in public? Basically, it was end of 2020. So COVID has started at that
Mhm.
point. And I actually said to my investor, the last SaaS company I was running, that, hey, we have spent a lot of money in this company. I was the CEO and founder, but I have investor as well. And I told them it's not going to work. So maybe it's a good time to stop.
Mm.
And after that, I left the company and I actually didn't know what to do. And my baby
Yeah.
girl, my first child, was getting born in 2 months. So I was
Oh,
thinking, why not just take 2 months off? Think about life,
yeah.
think about what I want to do. I usually do that between like career. I have these like career breaks. I usually like
Yeah.
to take time to reflect.
Mm.
But I am someone who I don't like to take breaks. Like I cannot just sit here and watch Netflix all the time. I like
Yes.
to learn. I like to do something.
Mhm.
So I went back to the internet because I've always been a lover of the internet. I spent so much time since I was a kid. And I started seeing all these creators like bloggers and building software, building courses, and they are just so transparent writing their journeys on their blog. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my God, this is so amazing because I've been working for 8 years at that point, and I felt like a nobody because all my
Wow.
work went into the company.
Yep.
And I worked really hard, but the work
Yes.
belonged to the company, not Kevon
Yes.
Chung. And I
Yeah.
was like, maybe I need to start building something under my name. And if these
Yeah.
people can do it, I can probably do it. Like I failed so many times as an entrepreneur, might as well give it another shot.
Yes.
So that
I love
was the
it.
moment I decided I need to start writing online.
Mm.
And my strategy was simple. I didn't know what to talk about. I don't have any industry knowledge to share. So I
Yeah.
just tell myself, hey, let me just write one article a week about something I'm learning, I'm curious about, and let's see where this goes. And then
Yeah.
after 8 weeks, I would look at the first 8 articles and I figure out I love talking about entrepreneurships, ups and downs. So that was the first kind of signal to me that my
Mm.
audience has to be entrepreneurs. That's the group of
Yeah.
people I love working with.
Yeah.
And then let me tell you the next signal, and then I can pass the mic back to you.
Yes. Yeah.
The next signal is I was like, now I know who I want to work with and talk to or serve, but I don't have a topic. I cannot just
Yeah.
write random blog posts. It doesn't work. I cannot build a name
Mhm.
that way. So suddenly, somewhere I bumped into this term build in public. And Dan, I've been telling you my story, and I'm pretty open and I love to share my weaknesses and all that. So when that term came to me, I was like, oh my God, this is, I wouldn't know if I should call it calling, but like it
Yeah.
is really what I'm supposed to do.
Yes.
So I decided to look at if this term is popular, and I went to Google. Guess what? 10 search per month in the US for building public. So
Just
obviously no
just
one
10?
cared. Just 10.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But on the other hand, I see on Twitter people are using the term, it's getting momentum.
Interesting.
But so I actually ignored the data and I went
Yeah.
with my gut and I
Yeah.
wrote the building public guide and give it out for free. So that was how
Yeah.
everything started.
Wow. I love it. I love it so much. And just your process, I think, is really fascinating to me. And I think this is really a really valuable process for listeners of how you applied yourself to creating, then looked back and looked at what you had created. And I think that is a really helpful thing because it could be, I think the temptation would be to look ahead, right? Rather than look
Yeah.
back.
Yeah.
Look ahead and just focus on where's the opportunity? What's like what else could I be doing? What else could I be writing about or whatever? But instead, like I just think it's a really important and valuable invitation to like take that time to reflect on what you've done, where you've, whether it's what's found traction or where you felt, the themes that you see amongst, among the things that you've created, or where you've just what you've enjoyed the most, and then use that as a guide for how you make your choices about what to move ahead. I just think it's a really, really great process.
I think you're exactly right, Dan, because like if we're creating a startup, if we are tackling some problems, then looking ahead might be the right way to do.
Yep.
But if you want to be a creator, that a lot of the content is you writing it out and you
Yes.
sharing, it has to connect with your heart and your mind.
Yes.
If you
Yes.
force yourself to write about something you're not even sure that fits you, you're
Mhm.
gonna quit sometime
Yep.
later. And I know
Yep.
this because I can tell you back in 2018, I tried to become
Yeah.
a YouTuber. I had
Okay.
a career break in 2018. And guess what topic I chose?
Actually, I think I know because I follow you on Twitter. It's something about parenting, right?
Yes,
Yes.
I chose parenting and raising a kid when I wasn't married and I had no kid. So you can see looking ahead as a
Yeah.
content creator is so dangerous. It doesn't work.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
why would someone listen to Kevon, a single guy, for parenting advice?
Yes. I love it. I love it.
That's how I know I have to look back.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I at one point tried to start a, blog. It was a podcast, actually. It was my first podcast before starting this podcast. It was called Startup with Kids. It was about entrepreneurship and parenting. And I got distracted by having my own family and just I think that it's similar to what you're saying. I didn't feel like there was enough in there for me, and like these are the kind of conversations with the meaning movement that like I want to have these conversations anyways, whether or not it's the podcast, right? Like I'm just insatiably curious about people's stories and how they navigate the transitional waters of life, and so that's why I've landed where I've landed. And it sounds like you're advocating for the same thing.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. uh I'm curious in your process about how you choose to end things, because it feels like kind of casually mentioned you'd started this company, you had an investor, and then you decided to call it you know to call it quits, or not call it quits, but just say this isn't going where we wanted it to go, and it's time to move on. And I know that that's a I don't know, a for myself, it's hard to make those calls, especially when you've invested a lot of time, effort, money into building something. And so I'm curious for you, like maybe in that particular moment or at other moments in your life when you've made these transitions, how do you make the decision to say, okay, this is done. This isn't going where I want it to go, or whatever it might be, and it's time to move on.
Yeah, this is definitely hard. But as you
Uh-huh.
ask me this question, I'm trying to go back to the few opportunities or career chapters I had and why did it end, how I ended them. And
Yeah.
there's a common theme, which is like I cannot see the growth trajectory for myself in that role. Like
Mm.
as a software engineer, my first job, I realized because I studied business, but I learned coding after graduation. I realized I love technology, but I couldn't be the one sitting there coding.
Yeah.
So that's when I say, hey, let's go back to a business role. And
Yeah.
then the next opportunity, I was running a kids coding school with the founder. I'm like the
Mm.
second person in command, and I realized like the business has gotten to a stage where it's so stable, like it's just taking bringing kids in, teaching them, and then keep running it operationally. So I don't feel like there's much more I can do.
Yeah.
So I decided to quit. But for me personally, quitting is actually not a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure if my wife would be listening to this, but in my previous relationship, I'm always pretty clear cut. If I
Yeah.
don't think she's my wife, I just
Mm.
cut it off. So,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people would be scared, like, oh, what if I cut it off and I cannot meet my wife? And what
Mm.
if she's my wife and I cut her off? But the
Yes.
thing is, we never know.
Yeah.
And if your heart is thinking she's not your wife, then you better do it. And guess what?
Mm.
Half a year later, my wife appeared and we
Yeah.
fall in love. We got
Yeah.
married. And then we have one kid now. Everything
Yes.
happened so fast.
Yes.
So I think we just shouldn't be dragging ourselves when there's like
Yeah.
opportunity cost ahead of us.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. I think that really speaks to me, and I think it's something I struggle with because I think because I'm stubborn. Like I struggle with like where's the line between I just need to you know grind it out and just stay the course versus like yeah this isn't going where I want to go, let's let go. But I feel like what I hear in your articulation of it is just a belief that there's more out there. I guess a belief in abundance, and maybe some of it is an abundance mentality versus maybe I have a bit of a scarcity mentality, like maybe this is the best that I could ever get, like how do I let go of this one thing that's so good? But you kind of have to in order to find the next you know better thing.
Yeah, and I guess if you're not in charge, then it's scarier because like
Yeah.
I was working for someone in the past. So to quit, it means like I have to communicate that decision to so many people. But now
Yeah.
I'm running my own thing. I'm bootstrapping, so no
Yeah.
investor. I don't see myself quitting. Like I
Yeah.
might fine
Yeah.
tune the business, I might bring in
Yes.
other incomes, but I really
Yes.
don't see that I would quit because everything is under my name.
Hmm.
Is a personal brand. Might as well just like find a way to make it work.
Yep. I love it. I love it. How talk to me a little bit, if you don't mind me asking, just about like how do you fund like how do you bootstrap like the leaving a job to start something without you didn't have a business that was already operational, you didn't have another income, like I don't know, was that it seems kind of scary to me, and I'm sure to listeners too, other listeners might be like in similar places where like well I've got this dream, this thing I want to do, but when do I quit my job to start pursuing it? How do you think about that transition?
I think well, everyone is different. First of all, like the financial status is different. So for
Yeah.
me, I was actually getting really good pay when I was running my last startup.
Yeah.
So I was the CEO, so I was getting good pay. So I don't really spend a lot of money. So I save a lot up.
Yeah.
And I think um, if your question is about like when they should make the move, I think is a really tricky question. I
Mm.
think if you have entrepreneurial experience, if you have failed before and you kind of understand what it takes, it is good to take a gamble and go
Yeah.
all in because you go so much faster
Mm.
and you probably have a more clear path ahead of you. But if you have never started something before,
Mm.
then this might be a bad choice because it takes a lot of time to figure it out. Then I
Yep.
would suggest this person to probably do some side hustle, start something on the side just to practice that muscle of
Yeah.
entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And you should only quit when you get enough traction. But for
Yeah.
me, like, if I'm being honest, right, I have savings. My family background allows me to do this, so I
Yep.
just go all in and gamble. But of
Love it.
course, like if I don't make money in the first 12 or 18 months, I would probably quit. But right
Yeah.
now, I'm seeing this uptrend line and
Yeah.
I think the business is growing and I'm just having so much fun, then I would stick with it. I need to
Love
try
it.
to make more to sustain, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't quit because the line is going
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. And you could see that line, you can follow it into the future and say, okay, as long as we can keep this going, maybe even make it increase faster,
Yeah,
you're going to get to a place where you're comfortable, which is
exactly.
really
Yeah.
great.
It's a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
faith in yourself.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I think that's a great message for listeners to have that faith and to take the calculated risk. And I think that's a big piece of it too, right? This was a risk for you, but also you had a safety net, a runway, if you will, financial runway to be
Yeah.
able to put some time and effort into this and see where it takes you,
Yeah.
which is great.
So one thing I want to add is like I'm not breaking even yet, but
Yeah,
then my runway, my burn rate, because the line is uptrend, right? So the burn
yeah,
rate is getting smaller and smaller.
yeah,
So that's why I'm more comfortable sticking to it. But
yeah,
if someone is still burning a ton of money, then
yeah.
quitting is not so bad.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really, really good piece of wisdom there. Thank you for that. I wanted to circle back to, well, it's not really circling back, but moving forward into building in public and your expertise, your current expertise. Um, as people are thinking about how they show up online, and thinking about this concept of building in public, of being more open and transparent with with their life, with the things they're working on. I'm curious if there's like, what's the low hanging fruit of building in public, of showing up in this way online? Are there some guidelines that you could offer listeners, offer myself, maybe even just direct it to me? What's the advice that you would give you would give me about how to improve? Because I know that my limiting fear my is just, yeah, that vulnerability piece of feeling like I'm not as successful, letting people know that I'm not as successful as I would like them to think that I am, or and those kinds of things.
I think the lowest hanging fruit is when you get on Twitter. Tell me if you see this as well, Dan. You see a lot of people using the you language, like
Mm,
you should do this, you should do that, because they want to sound like an expert, right? And
yep,
actually, I work with so many people. I remember one person told me, Kevon, I'm using the you language because I don't want to be selfish. If I use
mm,
the I language, I feel like I'm talking about myself all the time.
yep,
And I told him that is exactly the opposite.
mm,
Because when you're using the you language, you're pretending to be an expert. And
yep,
why would someone listen to, for example, if you say consistency is key and it comes from a new account, why would
yeah,
people want to listen to you for that when someone with 50K followers say that? A lot of people
yeah,
would listen to them
yes,
because is essentially the same message from everyone if you say this kind of wisdom bomb. But if you
yes,
change it from the you language to the I language, everything different because it's unique to you. And I would frame it like I have tried going on and off with my business before, but I realized actually just doing one thing right every day is the biggest growth factor. So I know that consistency is key. So
yeah,
now you can see that the message is exactly the same, which is consistency is key, but you're
mm,
adding your own story of what's happening, your thoughts, your ideas, your perspective to it. And now people can only look at you as the person to say that. It's
yeah,
unique to you. So I think the lowest hanging fruit is change from you to I a bit more.
yeah, I love
And
it.
also ask yourself one question at the end of the day. What did I learn today that can be useful for one other person on Twitter?
Mm, mm,
When you think about it this way, then you have so many things you can talk about. And
yeah,
it's nothing about driving traffic to a business or product, but it's more about helping one person and building that
mm,
trust and relationship. And who knows
yes,
where that will take you in the future. We don't know,
yes.
but I'm sure it's going to be good.
I love that, and I think that that's such a helpful reframing of the purpose of Twitter in particular, but I think most social networks. The content that's gonna do the best is content that's helpful, that's not just trying to get people to do the thing, take action, click through rates, or go to your, sign up for your free trial, or like all the things. Like, I think it's really easy to think of like social as just being like this extra place where you can get traffic or whatever. But what you're saying is like it's actually social.
Yeah,
Like, you actually have to be social to do it right, right? Was that
exactly.
a good understanding? Yeah.
Exactly. But I understand why people misunderstand it. Because if
Yeah.
you just go on Twitter, you look at the tweets with the most like and reply, they are the wisdom
Yeah.
bombs, like the
Yes.
consistency is key.
Yes.
And this mess up how people think about Twitter, because
Yes.
what they see is not right and they cannot break it down. So
Yeah.
that's why I understand why people think like that. And that's why I teach a course to help them with this.
Yeah, yeah. And so as you grow your platform, so as you get more followers and become a expert, quote unquote, uh, it sounds like you kind of need to change how you communicate, or maybe the opposite is a better way to think of it. When you're starting out, you need to be communicating more about more about, more maybe with honesty and humility. And then would you say as people grow a following, then they can maybe have a little bit more leverage to have more universal you kind of statements and those kind of messages?
Oh, totally. Like, let's just use me as an example, right? When I first started out, I spent quite a lot of time writing threads because I want to tell my story. Like, why am I
Yeah.
working on this project? What did I learn? And everything is about my process. But
Yep.
as you grow, guess what? You get lazy because your
Yeah.
attention is not on that anymore. Your attention is like business model,
Yeah.
sales funnel, and all that. And you get lazy. When you get lazy, then your tweet gets shorter, and then
Yes.
you're not really telling a story. You're just saying the lesson learned.
Yeah.
And honestly, I do some wisdom bomb these days as well. So
Yeah.
you see me using the you language,
Yeah.
but it's only because I get to this stage that I start doing it, and it actually has a benefit to it. If you look at what gets retweeted on Twitter, stories are less retweetable because
Mm.
let's imagine Dan, why would you retweet a Kevon story? It kind
Yeah.
of doesn't make sense. But if
Yes.
it's like a dry wisdom bomb and you think it's useful, if it inspire you, you would retweet it.
Yes.
So it has some value. It just cannot dictate 100% of your presence. So
Yes.
nowadays I mix it up a little bit.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so you want to be creating that content that can be retweeted. When people are starting out, it feels like the hardest. I don't. It's Twitter's hard to start on. It's really hard. You start. You have no followers. Like, what are the steps that you recommend people? Because I know a lot of people listening are inexperienced with Twitter. Maybe they have an account, but very few people are actually active. It's like the people that are active are really active, and a lot of people maybe just use Twitter just to read, tweet, once a week or once a month or whatever. How do you start? What do you recommend people do to start building a network on Twitter?
Yeah. So usually there are two types of people getting on Twitter. One is someone like me, end of 2020. I was a nobody. I don't have a topic. I don't know what I'm doing. So for
Yes.
this type of person, you basically just get on Twitter, understand your interests, understand the people you want to work with. Like, for example, I want to work with entrepreneurs. So I just go out and make friends with bootstrapping entrepreneurs, not the VC funded one, because I've done
Yeah.
that and I'm past that. So I'm
Yeah.
just making friends. And honestly, there's no secret. You just talk to people, be curious about what they do, and try to help each other in the journey. There's nothing to sell. And that's
Yeah.
the easiest way to get to like 600 and 1,000. It
Yeah.
takes time though. It took
Yeah.
me 3 months to get from 0 to 600. But
Yeah.
then once you get to that level, your perceived credibility is higher. And now you can do some real work, like writing a guide, writing a ebook or something to use that to help you with your growth. So this
I
is
love
what
it.
I recommend to this type of people. But I think
Yeah.
there's a different type of people that might have difficulty getting on Twitter. These are the people who are actually successful in their business
Yeah.
and they get on Twitter. They're like, I'm like, why do I need to spend all this time making friends? I'm so
Yeah.
busy with my business and I
Uh-huh.
know a lot about my topic.
Yes.
I don't know how to interact with people. And I think this is actually a bad thing, like a bad situation to have
Mm.
because you are an expert. But when
Yep.
you're on Twitter as a new account, no one knows that. People
Yes.
see like 23 followers and you're not
Yes.
an expert on Twitter. So you have to kind of get rid of that expert mindset and be a
Mm.
learner and just
Yeah.
be one of the new person,
Yes.
new person in the room to learn with everyone. Just keep sharing your
Yes.
learning.
I
So
love that.
that's how I see it for these two
Yeah.
types of people.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I think that's been a bit of a mindset adjustment that I've had. I've been on Twitter for ages, and maybe 10 years ago, I was like really trying to grow my Twitter, and like I was like following a bunch of people. Then every once in a while I'd go unfollow a bunch of people, and as a result, I have like a couple thousand followers on Twitter.
Uh-huh.
Um, but yeah, I have 4,600 followers. But, like, I think I really have probably about, like, 100 followers. Like, really, like, the people that actually care about what I have to say, like, they're not actually so here's Dan self-help hour question. What should I do? Because I kinda feel like I kinda would like it if people would unfollow me if they're not gonna engage with my content, you know? Part of it might also be a branding issue that I have a lot of I do a lot of things, and so, the meaning movement is probably the primary piece of my content, but then I also do real estate and software. Um, and so maybe that's some of it too, is like I'm maybe not as like honed in on one very specific thing that I'm tweeting about. But I'm curious what advice you would have for me in my situation.
I think you don't have to do anything with those numbers because
Yeah.
honestly, I'm actually really glad you're so honest because for me, I have like 13K followers, but honestly, so many are inactive. I know it. Everyone knows it.
Yes.
But
Yes.
as a result, like that number, your 3,000 or 4,000, that's still good perceived credibility. So I guess
Yeah.
you can still use it. But
Yeah.
what you can do more is how can you expand that 100 friendships to a
Yeah.
bit more? And I,
That's
I
great.
think you're right. Like you need to be a bit more focused because
Mm,
if you think about when someone is new to your content or your things,
yep.
they actually just want to learn one thing from you. It's really hard for
Yes.
them to say, I want to learn real estate, but I also want to listen to your story.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
confusing. People don't like to be
Yes.
confused. It is only possible when someone know you and they like you already, then they will be okay with everything you do. But
Sure.
as a
Yep.
start, it doesn't happen
Yep.
that way. So you
Yeah.
if you can break it down to one topic
Yeah.
and go full force in it, be sharing really good content, telling good stories.
Mm.
And I think, do you engage with people? Do you go to people's tweet to reply? That is
Yeah,
actually a big piece.
yeah. I do that. I probably I spend most of my time on Twitter doing that, and I also
Okay.
I wonder if I spend a disproportional amount of time responding and not creating enough content because I will maybe only tweet a couple times a week, currently,
Okay.
but I'm responding to people, every day. I'm usually, liking or replying to people that I'm, trying to build relationships
Okay.
with.
My way is around 3 tweets a day.
Yeah,
Not too many, not too few. And then 90% of my tweets are replies.
yeah.
So I look at my analytics. I actually tweet 1,000 times a month on average,
Wow. Yeah.
900 replies. So that
Wow.
comes down to 3 tweets a day and 30 replies a day.
Yeah.
So you can
Okay.
see
That's great.
which one is more important. I'll
Yeah.
let you figure it out.
Yeah, I love it, I love it. Well, I think yeah, just your response about my followers is really helpful because I think in my mind, I've been framing that as like, I'm not getting engagement because I have all of these followers and they're not engaging. But I think that the truth is I just need to act like, the few people that are actually engaging are my audience, and those are the people that I'm tweeting for, and don't worry about the fact that I have these other people that may be inactive or,
Yeah.
followed me years ago, and maybe they're not on Twitter anymore, or they don't they don't remember who I am, or they follow too many people, so I don't show up. So that's a really helpful, yeah, reframing for me.
Yeah,
So thank
I'll
you.
tell you a simple analogy to kind of relate to that. Imagine you're going to a conference. You don't want to just go on stage and start giving a TED talk and expect people to come into the conference hall to listen to you, right? That would
Yes.
be wrong, right?
Yes.
What you should do is go to the coffee area and start
Yeah.
looking at, oh, these 3 or 4 people groups, and you
Yeah.
listen to what they're talking about and you try to join these small groups and then you hop from one to another.
Yep.
And guess what? When you really need to go on stage, these people from the small groups will naturally go listen to you because they already
Yes.
know you.
Yep.
So
It's a great
taking this to
analogy.
Twitter, a lot of people just focus on tweeting and expect people to come knocking to their
Mm.
door.
Mhm.
No, you have to
Yes.
go bring people
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Go listen to their talks first and respond to them, and make those relationships, make those friendships. I
Exactly.
love that. That's
Yeah.
really fantastic. Well, I just want to maybe zoom out a little bit um, on your work. I know you earlier used the word, you could maybe call it a calling. I'm not, but whatever words you use, like I think those are words that people listening really like to think about, and they're thinking about in their own lives. And I just want to hear you talk a little bit more about like what is your yeah, I guess how you think about calling or purpose or legacy, like the meaning in the work that you do. And you can take this really, it's pretty open-ended question. You can take it any direction that you want to take it. But I just want to kind of focus in on like why like yeah, I guess at the end of the day, when you were like, this was a good work that I did today, what is what is the focus? Like what is it that you're thinking about?
I guess like when we talk about purpose, right? I think we can choose to talk about a lot of things, but we already talk about how we should look back to focus on things that really connect to our heart. But I think that's just one part of the equation. The
Mm,
second part of the equation is when you talk about this topic, when you're sharing and helping people with this, people need to recognize you for that. Because
yeah.
when I was talking about parenting, no one recognized me. People are probably
Mm,
laughing behind the scene. So that would not be my purpose. But now I'm
mm,
talking about building in public, and people kind of feel that my personality, my style really works with this topic,
mm.
and they recognize me. So imagine how I feel. Like people just keep thanking me, recognizing my work. My purpose just keeps growing because
Yes.
of the recognition. So I don't think a lot of people are trying to find their purpose or like find their topic. I don't think it works that way. It works like you try it out, you have an hypothesis of what your topic is, you try it out, and you try hard to get people to recognize you for that. And
Mm.
when it clicks, it's like the niche find you, the purpose find
Yes.
you.
Oh, that's
It's
a good
not
way
the
to
other
say
way
it.
around. So again, we're talking
Yeah.
about looking back, not looking forward.
Yes.
And yeah, overall, I think right now I'm helping people with building public. I have direct impact. I'm teaching them stuff and I'm seeing the progress.
Mm.
I think, I don't know, maybe I've been in education before. I told you I was running a kids coding school.
Yeah.
So I feel really awesome that
Yeah.
I'm able to deliver this kind of impact.
Mm.
Um, and it's not something at scale. Like I'm actually teaching like 20 people at a time. Some courses can get up to like 500 people. I actually don't want to go there because I
Yeah.
understand I like the intimacy with my
Yeah.
students, my people. So I guess it comes back to understanding what you want and
Yep.
the kind of life that you want to live.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
great. That's a fantastic response. And I love how you said, the niche will find you and to treat it like a hypothesis. I think that that's a really important piece that people, a misconception people have is that like they have to have it all figured out and that they're just like maybe to use like some of the language that we've used, they're looking back and then just like, okay, I'm just gonna find it and then I'm gonna know it and then I'm gonna do it and then that's the end. But it's more like I see a clue, I form a hypothesis, I go and try that, and then I look back again and say, "Oh, this, here's some more clues." And now I make a new hypothesis. And so it's this, I think, kind of a circle of like action and then reflection and action and reflection that then I think you kind of circle into, towards a more purpose, more fulfillment, more of a sense of calling in your work. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people think passion or purpose is something that you just find and you connect with and that's it,
Mm.
right?
Yeah,
It's not like that. Like
yeah,
if building in public, if I launch my free guide and people don't recognize me for building public, even though I feel that that's a topic for me, I don't think I have purpose or passion to keep going. Why would I
yes,
do that? So
yes,
I
yes.
think purpose and passion grows over time,
Mm,
and the people who are looking for the answer today, no, they won't find it. But you can
yeah,
start easy and
yeah,
influence one person at a time and let it grow over time. And maybe you will pivot a little bit, and that's okay as well.
yeah. I love that. What a great yeah, even just a great thought to move towards wrapping up with. So thank you so much for just sharing so much just wisdom with us. I love love everything that you're sharing about building public, about showing up on Twitter, all of it. And I've learned a lot from you, and I hope to continue to do so. So thanks for coming on and letting me pick your brain and hear about your journey. For folks that are wanting to follow along or connect with you, is there anything specific you'd like to invite them to?
Yeah, I think the best way to find me is definitely Twitter. Like my handle is Meet Kevon, MEETKEVON. You can, that's kind of the door to me. I'm very
Yeah.
active there. You can reach out to me personally. And then as a starter guide, my new book, Find Joy in Chaos, would be a great way to tap into my brain about
Yes.
everything related to Twitter and building public or making friends. Yeah, you can start with that.
Perfect. I'll make sure to link up to those in the show notes here. Thank you so much, Kevon. This was so fun having you on the show.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you, Kevon, so much for just sharing so much of your journey with the world and with me. I just really love it and appreciate it. Thank you for this interview. And listeners, viewers, thank you for tuning in. If you're not subscribed wherever you're watching or listening, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That's how you'll get notified when new episodes go live. If you're watching this, know that you can find it also in audio format wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Amazon, Google Play, Spotify, everything. We're in all of those places. And if you're just listening, know that you can also watch a video version of this podcast over on YouTube at youtube.com/The Meaning Movement. Would love to have you subscribe and follow along on all of those. If you haven't left a rating and review, you can do that in many of those places. I want to just take a moment. I know I say this all the time, but it is really how people like you find this show. It means so much to me to see those ratings and reviews come in. It's how search engines choose what to feed, what shows up when people search for related topics to topics like this show. And I've got a lot of competition. There's all these celebrity podcasts out there. These people have these huge platforms that I've got to compete with, let alone NPR and Gimlet and all these podcast houses. And this is just an independently created podcast. I don't have a huge team. I don't have a big company behind me. It's just me. And so anything that you can do to help me get found, help us get found, is just incredibly helpful. And leaving a rating review is a really great way to do that. I just want to thank you in advance for taking the time to do it. Our music is by Tom Roram. Our artwork is by Eleazar Ruiz. We'll be back with you in just a couple days. Thanks so much.